Mm, In today's video, we are going to go over some problems which regard the multiplication of the square root of two numbers. What do I mean here? Like, for example, you will have problems like the square root of 4 multiplied by the square root of 9. And this is a problem that would probably occur in your mathematical studies. So therefore, let's try to solve it. Well, this is a pretty easy one because the square root of 4 is equal to 2 and the square root of 3, the square root of 9 is equal to 3. So that is going to be just 2 times 3, which is 6. And we are going to take a look at something here, is that if I would write it up here as the square root of 4 times 9, so basically what in non-mathematical terms I did here is I put them in their I kept them multiplied and just put them in under one square root sign. So what's this? Well, this is the square root of 36, and that is also 6. And yeah, you may realize that you have 6 here and you have 6 here, so this is a legal thing to do. Now let's see some other problems. So what does this equal to? Well, I mean, you might need a calculator for it, but if you have this, then the square root of 9 is 3, and this is times 5, and this is going to be equal to 15. So we can say that that the square root of 9 times the square root of 25 is 3 times 5, which is 15. So what we are assuming here is that, I chose two numbers right now because they're pretty big, and you might tell the what the two are multiplied together, but that is, it's not like an extremely quick idea. So what is this going to be equal to? Well, you would assume this is going to be equal to the square root of 15, because the square root of 15 is 15. 15 squared, and the square root of that is just 15, and by our rule we should get 15 here. And by the way, 15 squared is indeed 225, just like 9 times 25. So yeah, this is equal to the square root of 225. So, and if you would, I probably can't share my screen here, but if you would like pop it into a calculator, you will get the same answers as well. So this is certified. So now what we can say is, if we want to generalize this rule, we could say that the square root of a times the square root of b is equal to the square root of a times b. So this is a pretty important thing that we learned, and from now on we are going to use this one in our studies and in our problems of today. So let's see. Let's do some more of these. Now now it was pretty easy. Like, you had pretty easy exercises because all of the numbers a a integer square root. So you didn't really need that trick. However, it was good for proving that this thing works. And now that we proved it, let's see something that where we should, or sort of must, use it to solve the problem. What about if we want to figure out the square root of 3 multiplied by the square root of 12? Now what do we have here? Well, none of these numbers have a integer square root, so we need this identity here. So that is going to be equal to the square root of 36, because 3 times 12 is 36. And voila, we solved it because this is just 6. So, this was a pretty cool way of using it. Now another one to do is, well, let's go with something like we can say that that's 5 times 20, which is 100, and we can put it under a one square root sign. So this is the square root of 100, which is going to be equal to 10. So this is also pretty solvable. And by the way, there is some other way of doing it, and we will get to that in a minute. But first, I would like to show you something else that, of course, this one works backwards as well. So if you want to find out not even find out, but if you want to sort of transform, let's say, the square root of 12 into something, then you can very much do that. For example, you could say that this is the square root of 3 times the square root of 4. And what's this going to be equal to? Well, the square root of 4 is 2, and this is the square root of 3, so square root of 3 times 2. And this is some problem that you might face that we will face today later, and we will use this one because a useful tactic that if an exercise they will most likely tell you to bring this the square root of 12 expression to the simplest form. They would like you to do this, and you would basically have to break it up into the basically something multiplied by something. So the square root of something multiplied by the square root of something. And the great rule to follow here is that you should always look for numbers like 4, which have a whole square root, an integer square root. So these numbers are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, and so on and so on. So 64, just numbers which have a integer square root, because then you can simplify it in this way. Now let's see another one. If we would like to, let's say, figure out the square root of 25. And another tip, that if you are looking for these numbers which you can break this one up, sort of break it up, because in this case this 12 was 3 times 4, and our main rule to follow here is that always look for the biggest number which has a integer square root, because that's the simplest form. So, and this is just a little side note. So we have 75 here, and how can 75 be written up? Is what is it multiplied by what? Well, if we are looking for a number which has an integer square root, well, we could say that that's 25, and of course 75 is 3 times 25. And then we could say that, okay, we just keep the square root of 3 as it is. We don't do anything with it, and we just multiply this by 5. So, this is another problem that we might face later. Now I'm just going to erase this and continue our works here. So, this is basically just the rule that try to write it up as the square root of something multiplied by the square root of something, where one number has an integer square root. Next one, what if we, let's say, have the square root of 2 multiplied by the square root of 50. This might be a bit too easy, but we could try this one as well. Because the thing that I would like to point out here is that there is another way of solving these problems. This is, I believe, the preferred way, because it's easy to say that, oh, right now this is the square root of 100, which is 10, because 2 times 50 is 100, and the square root of 100 is 10. But another way of solving this is that you can break up this 50 as the square root of 2 times the, and times what do we have here? Well, we have 25 less, so the times the square root of 25. So what do we have here? Well, we have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 25, which is just equal to 2, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2, times the square root of 25 is 5, which is going to be equal to 10. What a great way to solve it. Of course, this first one is probably the preferred way by most students, which I can completely agree, because it is the easier one. But this is just a little something to remember. Now, some other problems that we might face. I'm just gonna erase the board and write up something. So, what if we have something like 2 times the square root of 10 times the square root of 5. Now this is an interesting one. If you have a 2 right here, the best idea is just to keep it that way. That's not a square root. That will be probably part of the simplest for you might get an integer out of this expression and multiply that by 2 or something like that. But we're just gonna leave that number 2 alone for now. And then this is going to be the square root of 50. And how can we write up the square root as 50 as a number? How can we basically write a 50 as a number multiplied by a number which has a integer square root? And the square root of 2 times the square root of 25 is probably a nice bet, because the square root of 25 is 5. So we have 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 25. And what's this going to be equal to? Well, the square root of 25 is just 5. So, this is just 5. Oh, sorry, I kind of wrote it up wrongly, because I already wrote up the square root of 25. So we have 5 here. And we can multiply the 2 and the 5 together, because it's a multiplication. The order of which we multiply the numbers it basically doesn't matter. So this is 10 times the square root of 2, and I hope this video helped. I will probably upload more of these.